So the original Dead Space was one of, if not my favorite horror games to play, especially during the spooky months. Everything about it was just so freaky, from the environments, which just made everything look like it was abandoned, down to even the necromorphs, which were absolutely terrifying and disgusting. The first game was pretty good. The second game was actually even better. And the third game, while I never really played it, tanked the franchise, even though it did have some interesting aspects to it, such as a co-op feature that was actually different if you decided to play as the second player. Unfortunately, modern gaming made its creeping way into that game, and so it didn't necessarily gel with the majority of players. And then the company was shut down shortly after. Fast forward until today, where the creators of Dead Space formed their own company, Striking Distance, and decided to try their hand in the horror genre once more, with their newest game, the Callisto Protocol. How does this game compare to its predecessor? It's fun, and it definitely took me a while to get into it, but it definitely does have some frustrating aspects as well. For this review, I'm going to go over the story and then the gameplay functionality of the game itself. So if you're wanting to actually play through the story yourself, which I somewhat recommend, then please, by all means, click off of this video and just save it for another time. That being said, I do gaming reviews about every week, most likely bi-weekly, and I also do some COD content on the side here and there. So if you're interested in this sort of thing, please be sure to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and of course the bell icon as well. Without any further ado, let's game. So the story starts in a futuristic city called Europa, with this chick walking around it until she finds a strange jack-in-the-box looking thing. But before any major story beats are revealed, it transitions into a news report saying that her name is Danny and that she's part of a terrorist group called the Outer Way. It starts with Jacob, our protagonist, and his buddy Max watching the news report en route to deliver some cargo to the moon of Jupiter, Callisto. They seem to be arguing about something that's probably not important at all when a yellow light goes off, so Max tells Jacob to go check it out. He checks on the special cargo, which definitely won't be important later. Turns out they're being boarded, so Jacob opens the cargo bay to the vacuum of space. Hope all that cargo is tied down. We see that the pirate chick is actually Danny, and that she doesn't really take kindly to being exposed to the vacuum of space, so she shoots out the window.
Everybody strap in! We're about to open some fucking windows.
And they have to make an emergency landing on Callisto. Jacob survives, and Max gets the Dick Cheney treatment, while making Jacob feel extra guilty for killing him. A rescue team saves Jacob, and by saves, I mean they imprison him against his will, as well as the chick that crashed his ship. On the way to Black Iron Prison, they see a video of the warden that plays, who probably isn't corrupt or planning anything sinister, and just wanted to imprison Jacob against his will for completely valid reasons. The correction officer that rescued Jacob is your basic, sympathetic, bad guy starter pack. And by sympathetic, I mean he's a simp for the warden.
Welcome to Black Iron Prison.
I just love that last part. Gives me chills every time.
Jacob gets an implant on the back of his neck in clear reference to Agent 47 by this doctor chick by the name of Muller, and then passes out. He has some sort of lucid dream. He sees the same weird jack-in-the-box thing that was in the news report at the beginning of the game, before his dead buddy Max comes in with a jump scare.
Dang old boo, man.
He wakes up to see a fiery hellscape that is California, I mean the Black Iron prison system, and finds a guy named Elias, who says he spent most of his life in the prison and he's been planning to break out for years, and wants you to get his cell door open, so he gives you a shiv as a sign of good faith. It then gives you a very clunky tutorial on the melee combat. I mean, it gives you the explanation on how the combat works after you beat the first enemy, which probably would have been good to know before I got my ass whooped 3 times. Jacob tells Elias he just got jumped by some outer-worldly space zombie, and of course he thinks he's crazy, so he sends him on a suicide mission to go to the guard tower to open up more doors, and he finds a cool electric police baton along the way. He finally gets to the watchtower and finds the guard who imprisoned him, whose name is Leon. Leon seems pissed because he thinks the warden thinks that Jacob is special, and he's worried he won't be invited to the warden's private OnlyFans account. So he tosses you around for a little bit, and then gets his ass infected and thrown out of a building, which we can assume he died, I guess. Jacob finally makes it to Eliza's, who tells him that they have to get a hacker that's in the shoe right now, so that they can hack the network and call down a transport ship from orbit. So Jacob has to cut out a few core units in the back of the necks of some of the guards so he can gain access to new areas. And he also gets this game's version of the anti-gravity arm gauntlet-like thing that was in the original Dead Space game. Although this one can't slow enemies, which kinda sucks. The elevator breaks, and Jacob finds himself in the basement, which is really just a minor setback for the player to test out the gauntlet some more. So Jacob and Eliza's make their way into the shoe. So it turns out that Danny is the hacker, and she's the only one that can call down the ship. But she locks Jacob in her cell and refuses to help, and says she'd rather take her chances, but like, what chances do you really have? I mean, like, everything's kind of fucked. You know, I mean, you can't really go very far without a pilot.
Bitch, are you dumb, 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 dumb?
She says this.
A word of advice, though? Don't trust him. He's not what he seems.
So I thought she was actually saying this to Jacob about Eliza's, which would have been interesting. But really, she's actually saying this to Eliza's about Jacob, which is kind of weird because it's not like she knows anything about him at this point. Like, yeah, he killed a couple of your stank-ass pirate crew members, but you were robbing him, and what was he supposed to do? So Jacob escapes the cell by opening the electrical box in the cell and cutting a couple of the wires there, which seems like a major design flaw, but who am I to question the integrity of a prison system on the moon of Jupiter?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Eliza directs Jacob to the waste processing plant, and along the way, Jacob overhears Eliza giving someone else directions.
Call in a tram now. You're gonna have to sneak out the way you came in. Look for a vent in the far corner.
I thought this was setting up to an Eliza's betrayal plot, but I'll just say this right now, this is never actually brought up again. Like, Jacob never even asked him who he was even talking to, which is, like, kind of weird. Like, seriously, it just seems like a missed opportunity. I don't know what they were thinking with this. Eliza then tells Jacob to head to the Habitat Dome, and that he left a video recording showing the way there. Something about this game that's kind of funny, at least for me, is when people are talking to you on the two-way comms, it comes out of your controller. So while I'm editing, I have this to deal with.
Ran plenty of jobs out of that place. Feels like a lifetime ago. How the hell am I supposed to get there?
They introduce a new enemy in this part that can turn invisible, which is actually pretty cool. And they also introduce this new mechanic when you damage an enemy, it will sprout tentacles, and if you don't shoot the tentacles or kill them quickly enough, they'll turn into a stronger enemy that does double the damage and usually has twice the amount of health it normally has. Also, it heals itself from all previous damage when it transforms. Anyways, after the waste processing plant, you go through the oxygen treatment plant to call the tram down. You know, typical video game roadblocks, you know how it is. They finally make it to the tram station, and they both get suited up in some sort of spacesuit thing. Kind of a shame you can't really customize it or anything like that. I don't know. Jacob and Eliza have a little heart-to-heart here, and Eliza says that he's in for murder. While Jacob tries to rationalize it for him, Eliza says he is responsible for his own mistakes and takes responsibility for his actions. A theme that is semi-successfully achieved by the end of this game. Leon then shows up, pissed that his senpai won't notice him, and depressurizes the room, throwing them out into the barren wasteland of Callisto. Jacob meets up with Eliza, but his helmet is busted and isn't gonna make it. He thanks Jacob for at least letting him get this far, and then passes away.
It's so cold in the day. How the fuck do we supposed to keep peace Welcome to the Gulag.
I don't feel like we got enough time with Elias to really have this super impactful moment that they wanted here. Like, I wish both of the characters had some sort of personality flaw that only the other one could have fixed or something, and then they bonded over that. Or even if there were a few sections where you had to save him and then he had to save you. I think that really would have made us feel like he was losing his only friend in this hellish place. But for what it is, it's an okay payoff, I guess. Danny shows up right after to rip out Elias's core and tell you to fuck off and meet her at the hangar. I really don't get why she's jeopardizing her own freedom by doing this again. It just seems like it'd be way safer and a smarter option to let him come with you. I mean, even if he did kill your crew, you killed his friends. I mean, stuff is kind of not really good right now, Situation has changed.
New shit has come to light.
This section is actually probably one of my favorite, since it's really hard to see, and the enemies are either frozen solid and come to life when you get close, or they pop out of the frozen ground, making it feel really hectic. Like you can't even trust the ground you're walking on. It was actually a little scary. So after wandering around a bit, Jacob gets to the hangar and meets up with Danny. She's reluctant, but realizes that they need to work together. So she gives him a spanking new shotgun as a sign of good faith. Danny starts working on the transport vehicle to get them to the hangar, while Jacob gets the doors open, which of course means more enemies. Danny pulls the transport vehicle around, and she refuses to talk to Jacob while she takes a detour to Jacob's ship to check on the special cargo that he was carrying, which seems to be some sort of medical supplies. Danny is still skeptical that Jacob isn't telling her the full story, and she still thinks that he had something to do with what happened on Europa, which was in the news report that we saw at the beginning that said that Danny was responsible for that.
Don't try to talk your way out of this. I know you were involved.
I had nothing to do with what happened on Europa.
So a little bit of explanation here. Basically, the company that owns Black Iron is called UJC, and Danny was tracking their systems for a bioweapon that they created, and she tracked down the bioweapons to Jacob's transport ship. This is kind of stupid for a number of reasons, but I'll explain later. On their way to the hangar, Danny mentions that she isn't surprised about anything that has happened so far, saying that she saw something like this back on Europa, which we can assume the media covered up and blamed it on Danny. They get to the hangar and manage to call down the transport ship, but turns out the warden is still alive and has no intention of letting them live after what they've witnessed. So he blasts the ship out of the sky, causing Jacob to do a little freefall skydiving minigame before having a scary dream sequence.
Dang old boo, man.
Jacob is awoken by Danny, and they find themselves underneath the prison. Turns out there used to be a mining company down here before the prison was built on top of it. Jacob is obviously pissed that their one shot of freedom is now gone. Danny has accepted that they have no hope of survival, and they must instead find answers to why this is all happening, and somehow get that out into the world. They try to take the elevator to cut through the colony and back into Black Iron, but the elevator's busted. But Jacob ends up falling down there anyways, and he finds himself in the bowels of the mining company, where all the enemies have been down here for so long that they have no eyes and rely completely on sound, which is actually a nice change of pace with how you can actually use some stealth to take out a few or all of them in a given area. Jacob decides to keep pushing forward to find the transport hub since he's cut off from Danny, and after sneaking through all the enemies, he makes it to some sort of transport hub, and this part was probably the hardest in the whole damn game. I mean, they just throw a wall of enemies at you, including a new one, which despite how he looks, he's actually pretty easy to beat in combat. And it made things especially easy when I learned that I could just pick up the enemies and throw them off the platform. You make your way up to a light tower to meet up with Danny, and she's a little frazzled since she's been linking with all the people here, which she says is like reliving their memories. She says that there was some sort of outbreak down here that happened just like in Black Iron, and the UJC killed everyone, and the rest of the infected that lurk down here are what's left of the colony of miners. Jacob investigates this big dome-like structure while video recordings of Dr. Muller, the doctor who gave you the core implant, explains the truth of what happened here. She says that this giant-ass creature was found underneath the ice while some of the miners were working one day, and it was killed by the security down here, but the research team found thousands of larvae inside of it, and it accidentally mutated the miners down here, but only one of them kept their humanity and intellect intact while their body reaped the benefits of the contagion. The UJC saw this and thought that this was the next step in human evolution and have been trying to replicate the effect ever since. And since that they had the worst of the worst criminals that no one would ever care about if they went missing, they had an unlimited supply of test subjects. Jacob also finds the same box down here that he had on his ship that was housing the special cargo, except this one has a secret compartment that's holding a bunch of vials. This, once again, does not make a lick of sense, especially once we get to the twist. You'll see what I mean. So Leon pops out, and it seems like being the warden's #1 donator on OnlyFans and being infected has made him nearly invulnerable to all attacks. I kind of like how if you die, he just spits on your corpse. Like, the amount of disrespect is hilarious. Anyways, Jacob manages to escape, but Danny gets infected in the process. She tries to unalive herself, but Jacob stops her, intent that there must be some sort of cure. And if anyone would have it, the warden would. Just as a side note, but I got really excited for a second, because this shot made me think that this was the Ishimura from Dead Space. But really, it's just the shoe that looks, like really infected or whatever. Just then, they get jumped by some security Huns and thrown into a cell. And just when all hope is lost, Muller contacts you. She says that she was able to redirect the security bots to give her Danny, and she knows how to make a cure. Jacob escapes and makes it to her lab, and demands to know what the vials are and what happened on Europa. So the doc links Jacob and Danny's cores together, so they will have each other's memories, although it will be some time before it takes its full effect. Muller says he needs to synthesize an antidote from the warden's #1 Hun on OnlyFans, Leon himself. She also explains everything we already figured out up until this point, although we do learn that it wasn't actually an outbreak that infected everybody here, but a planned infection of the whole prison itself. The only explanation she gives is that the warden believes evolution doesn't happen in a lab, it happens out in the wild, and that he's part of some sort of super secret Illuminati types that have been controlling things for generations. Typical forefather shit. Muller says she has no desire to escape, and that her fate is sealed, and this is where she belongs. Once again, foreshadowing the theme of responsibility. Danny wakes up and they head to the top of the tower to confront the warden. On their way there, Jacob starts tripping on that hardcore memory shit, and he sees Max, who confronts him in his hallucinated state. This is when the plot twist is revealed, and it turns out that the little pink jack in the box is actually the vial, and Jacob found the secret hidden compartment before they took off for Europa, but thought it was none of his business.
So that was a fucking lie.
And it turns out Danny had his sister on Europa who died. And it's shown that he transported the cargo that infected the city on Europa and Black Iron. They really try to guilt trip him here, and even Max asks him rhetorically how he's going to make this all right. But it's not like he could have known what he was doing, or that he knew what was going to happen. I mean, it's not like he knew he was actually carrying that stuff. Also, why did they show the little pink jack in the box in the beginning of the game if it was from Danny's perspective? And also, why would they show that in the news report? I mean, it seems like it was Danny's sister's toy or something. I don't know. I think the reveal of this twist could have been done a lot better. It's like they had two story teams and was like, okay, so we put all of this literal mystery box storytelling shit inside the game and now make it all make sense. Like, come on, this plot twist only works if you purposefully deceive the audience, which I just do not agree with. But we'll save that till the end. So Jacob wakes up and Danny can't go any further, so Jacob has to go in alone to confront the warden. The warden does the typical bad guy trying to do the right thing shtick. He says he did this all for humanity to find a way to survive and flourish out in space because our rinky-dink bodies are a hindrance, and while his methods were rash, they were worth the risk. Gotta admit though, the voice actor for this guy is actually really good. Props to him. So the warden then brings his #1 donator and cameraman to his OnlyFans, Leon, out in one last final fight against Jacob to determine who is best for humanity and his bathwater. Leon then transforms into his final form, the Simp Lord.
He's trying to hands-free ejac.
The final battle here is okay, I guess, if not a bit average. He's really not too much different from the other tank-like enemies in the game, except he has a long-range attack as well. You just have to dodge his attack, shoot, run away from the ranged attack, and repeat. They throw in a couple of insta-kill exploding enemies as well, so that's kind of fun. I mean, it does kind of seem a little lackluster. If he really is the final stage of evolution, I kind of expected him to transform a few more times. Like maybe he actually turns into the stalker type enemies and turns invisible and he hunts you from the shadows or something. I don't know. Anyways, so Leon biffs it and Jacob extracts the antidote. But the warden doesn't want Jacob to waste 1,000 years worth of research on Danny, so he offers an escape pod in exchange for the vial, which is kind of like, don't give your cards away that easily, my dude. He could just take the vial and run away with it. Just then, Danny comes in to clap the warden's cheeks. But of course, he wouldn't actually be in the room and is just projecting his image from his OnlyFans account. Jacob then gives the cure to Danny, but the warden assures them that their plans, while stopped for now, are going to be proceeding on their way, since the data they collected will go to other planets to continue to the next phase. He then activates the base's self-destruct feature, while Danny and Jacob run for the escape pods. Which, once again, why would you even tell them where it was before you had what you wanted? Turns out there's only one escape pod, so Jacob throws Danny inside, completing his arc of self-redemption and responsibility. And Jacob, like a true G, defends the escape pod while sacrificing himself.
That transfer worked both ways. He learned more about me, and I learned more about him. Was he trying to make up for the pain he caused? Or just chasing some kind of redemption?
I really don't get the difference between those two things, to be honest. I'm not sure why they put that in there. Jacob also gave her the larvae to expose the truth to the world. So, that was nice. It then shows Jacob at the very end at the base and is still alive, ready to accept his fate, when Muller calls him and says that there might be a way out for him after all if he helps her. But just then, Leon comes in for one final jump scare and to take back the bathwater. So let me go over a few things I did and didn't like about the game before saying my final thoughts. The environment and the graphics are actually very good. I really like the prison sections and the wasteland of Callisto. The lighting is also used very effectively, and the atmosphere and mood is always oppressive. I do like the loot grind, as a matter of fact. There were many places that had a variety of loot in them, but also more enemies. So it was kind of that risk versus reward type gameplay. I like the anti-gravity gauntlet, even if it is a ripoff from Dead Space. There were many times I didn't even know how I was going to beat an enemy until I threw them up against a wall of spikes or into a turbine. You can upgrade it, but I saw a little improvement in my overall gameplay. I mostly forgot I had it, to be completely honest. The guns feel very nice in the game. I really like how they mostly have the same receiver, so you can swap them out mid-combat for other guns. Although I will say that some of the guns are more useful in certain situations. I also really like how the attachments are 3D printed onto your gun. It gives you a real sense of progression when you see them getting bigger and stronger. Guns like the shotgun and hand cannon feel real meaty and they actually pack a damn punch. However, guns like the tactical pistol just do not. I mean, it does have a higher fire rate, but it is very weak, even with the damage upgrade on it. On top of that, when you beat the game, you're forced to start everything over again. I mean, you're essentially forced into 1 or 2 weapons that you want to max out, and the rest you just kind of have to mid-max. Not only that, but some of the best weapons are at the end of the game, so you don't even really get to use them all that much. I will say though, I do like the addition of melee combat. I just wish it had a dedicated dodge button, cause things get a little fucky when you got more than one enemy attacking you at once. The stick dodging mechanic is okay, but it definitely took some getting used to, since you can either dodge by moving left or right, or you can block by holding back. But since I played on the hardest difficulty, a block usually meant tanking 1/6 of my health. And then also when you're dodging, you have to dodge in a different direction for every attack. So if an enemy has a chain combo, you have to dodge right, left, right, left, right. There are some pretty cool upgrades that can mitigate these factors though. But once again, you're really going to be struggling to figure out which ones you do and don't want. The story was decent, but they really dropped the ball in some areas. Like, other than the fact Jacob is a space truck driver, we don't actually know anything else about this dude. And the same with the other characters. I wish they would have done just a little bit more world building in this way. Like maybe when Jacob gets the gun for the first time, Eliza's asks him if he's ever used one before. And Jacob says he used to shoot Clyborps with his dad back on his home planet, but he's never used a 3D printed one before. You know, something like that would have made the world feel a bit more lived in. Like the world has existed quite a long time before you turned on the game. And this isn't just a Jacob exclusive issue, this is with all the characters too. We never really get any specifics about their lives. The closest one we get is Eliza's when he says that he was a murderer, but even then we don't get any context to any of that. It just makes them feel very one note. I will say the enemy variety could be a lot better. I mean, they're really just humanoid zombie dudes. I mean, if these things are supposed to be the next step in human evolution, why don't we see that? The only one that looked and acted different was the Stalker, with its long limbs and ability to turn invisible. The rest just acted identically except for the Spitter type enemy, which has more health and can use long range attacks on you. Other than that, they pretty much act identically to each other. Speaking of enemies, most of Jacob's death animations are very lackluster. Hope you like seeing Jacob get his neck broken. Face bashed in. Oh, god damn it!
It's the same fucking animations. It's like, I hate these animations. They're so dumb.
Eyes gouged out and the top of his head ripped off, because that's 90% of what you'll be seeing through the game. There are more gruesome ones, but they usually don't come in until you fight a boss. I mean, Dead Space had some crazy death animations, and I just wish they would have taken a bit more inspiration from that. Although I think I know why, but I'll explain in a little bit. So what did I think about the game experience as a whole? I would say it's acceptable frustration. The gameplay is fun, but it's missing just that special ingredient that would really push it into the memorable category. If you play Dead Space a lot, the gameplay actually translates pretty well, and I think that's what they were going for. However, the combat does take a while before you actually understand it. I mean, seriously, around the 5-hour mark, I wanted my money back from this game. And if Sony would have accepted my request, I would not have done this review. That being said, when I finally understood the way you're supposed to play, I started actually having a lot more fun. The story, however, has some problems, with it purposefully deceiving the player. I mean, I hate that stuff. I always believe a good plot twist shouldn't make you say, I didn't see that coming. No. A good plot twist should make you say, I should have seen that coming. If the writers alter or leave out details to make the twist work, then that's not a good twist. The characters also being one note, and the warden's plan not making sense beyond insanity, and the lackluster ending just made the whole experience feel hollow. That being said, there is a season pass that they're going to do, and they will most likely be concluding Jacob's storyline, but they also said they'll be adding a horde mode and 13 new death animations, which I think is a little scummy since that this game could have really used them. And to hide the final ending and a couple of death animations behind a $30 paywall when you're already paying $70 for the game with an okay story at best, I mean, it just doesn't sit right with me. Striking Distance really took a risk on this game, especially making it so similar to Dead Space with the Dead Space remake on the horizon, which actually looks really good, and I will 100% be doing a review of that when it comes out. All in all, the game was okay. If I had to give it a grade, with 1 being terrible and 10 being Game of the Year worthy, I would say 6. Slightly above average, but it gets this grade by the skin of its ass. I mean, I might even be too generous right now. And with all the things wrong with the game at the price point it is right now, I just can't recommend a buy for it right now. I mean, maybe when the price comes down and the DLC is bundled in with it, then maybe I would say it's a good game to pick up for the price. Hopefully the season pass has more to offer while still being original and not copying too much from Dead Space. Or maybe copying is what they need to do. Thank you very much for listening to the review for this long.
I was watching that.
It was a long and grueling process, but I finally made it through to the other side after a lot of frustration, but also some fun. If you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want more reviews like this, I have a whole playlist of reviews I've done. I try to get reviews out every week, but they more likely end up every 2 weeks or so, maybe a month if it's taking really long. If you do check out my reviews, I would say check out The Quarry. That video doesn't seem to get a lot of love, and it was actually kind of a cool game. I've also been doing a lot of COD stuff, so I'll be sure to do more reviews on the content that comes out of that end. Me and my friends were also thinking of starting a podcast, hopefully soon. It's going to be like gaming news of the week kind of stuff, so keep your eye out for that in the near future. With that being said, thank you once again, have a great day, and tell me how your playthrough or thoughts on the game are in the comments below. I try to respond to every one of them. Thank you.